So we're kind of doing this on the fly. But anyway, I'll let you take this. Your podcast.
All right. Well, I mean, it's your thing over here. It's my podcast, but it's your thing. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So welcome to Craft Conversations, guys, and welcome to Studio 117 here at Homegrown Brew House, where we're going to do a monthly session up until Election Day, right? So this is the first session. We're going to do a Q&A session with the mayor, potential mayor. Right now we have Fleming Moore, Mr. Fleming Moore here. Hopefully we're going to get more candidates in here to do the same thing. We can hear what they have to say as well, right? So I'm Brian Dales. I'm your host. And I think we're going to start with the slideshow.
Yes, we will. And my daughter over there, Sarah, is going to help me out with this. So
all right. Thank you, Sarah.
I'm going to stand up a little bit and talk.
Okay.
Or maybe I won't have to stand up.
Yeah, if you can see it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's Fleming Moore, a.k.a. Shady. And y'all can ask questions anytime and interject during this presentation. This is very informal.
Right.
And a mayor of the people, for the people. And I'm going to explain that here as we go through. Sarah, would you hit the next slide, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is going to be redundant for some of you longtime residents, but I think it's important for us to know where we are. And in order to know where we are, it's important to know where we came from. And I say that because a lot of what's happening in town is ingrained into our history. Summerville has a rich history. It was founded by affluent people from Charleston who had enough money to escape from malaria in the summertime. So they set up a village in Summerville back in the 1830s and around the campus of St. Paul's. If you notice that top picture on the right-hand side is a picture of St. Paul's from long ago. The St. Paul's that campus is the original town square of the village of Summerville. If you notice, the old town hall building is actually on Carolina Avenue, and it was founded by a Bishop Gadsden, and he was the first rector of St. Paul's. And as it turns out, a lot of the people who served in government throughout the years in St. Paul's served on the vestry of St. Paul's. And why is that important? I served on the vestry of St. Paul's, so maybe the vestry is a launch pad for a political career. Not that I want a political career. That picture is one of the grand old inns in Summerville. That people from all over the country would come and vacation in Summerville. So Summerville, in a sense, and I'm going on folklore from my grandfather, so you have to excuse me on this, but its population would swell and then go down as with the season. And in fact, I think Summerville was kind of based on a snake oil, because they said if you the pine trees were good for respiration. They somehow had a study done where these people proclaimed that the scent of the pine needles was good for your respiratory ailments, and a lot of people came to Summerville with the belief that if they breathed the pine needles that they would have a healthier life. So Summerville has a history of trying to attract people here as a destination. All right. So could you go to the next slide? How did I end up here? What you'll see there is, I'm going to stand up for this. This is the fork in the roads at 165 and 78. That's where my mother grew up. She moved here during the Depression. She was impoverished. My grandfather worked at George Singleton's nursery on 78, and I want to talk about that because he worked during the Depression with WPA grant and helped plant a lot of the azaleas you see in Azalea Park. Why do I want to mention that? Is because Frank Cuthbert I think was the mayor at the time, had the vision to know that azaleas weren't, if we planted a park there, that we'd have people come to see the flowers. And he invested a lot of his own money, and so did Mr. Singleton, and donated the flowers so that we have Azalea Park, which showed a vision because I didn't live during the Depression. It might look like I did, but I didn't. And knowing the stories of that there wasn't a lot of money. So plant over 3,000 plants in Azalea Park showed a vision, and the kind of vision we need in a mayor. This is my mother, Sue Fleming Moore. She grew up above that service station and spent her whole life trying to move to the other side of the tracks. Now, a lot of this is not as important as it used to be, but it still prevails. There's a railroad track running through the middle of Summerville that divides people into classes. And I wasn't there when they designed the town, but if you look at it, they put once the railroad came through, what happened was the center of gravity shifted from around the village of St. Paul's up to the square because the railroad came through there. And then we had businesses come, and it was good, and development happened. But my mother lived just on the wrong side of tracks. She was in Pigeon Bay. But the good news was, her first day of school, when she moved here from Orangeburg, she was shy, and there was not a seat for her to sit in. And a woman named Mary Boyle, who ended up being Mary Boyle Limehouse, said, "You can sit with me." And so she shared her desk, and my poor little shy mother spent her whole third grade right next to Mary, and Mary ended up being my godmother. And ended up, my mother fell in love with St. Paul's Anglican Church, and that's how I ended up at St. Paul's. And but my mother and my grandfather especially felt the difference between the classes. In fact, it was painfully obvious when you compare where my mother grew up to where her friends at. And so what my mother did is, unfortunately, she tried to force me to be friends with people of better means and upper means, which is not fair to a child. I guess she just wanted better for her children. So these are some of the issues that still are prevalent, that are hard to outgrow. And I'm not blaming anybody. It's just that when we grow up, believe in certain things, it's very hard to see. It's like we have scales on our eyes sometimes. Unless you know homelessness, you will not, unless you experience, a lot of us, unless we experience something, it opens our eyes when we do it. I guess my point. That's my mother with my other godmother, Jean Lott Store. If you know where Mr. Knight's house is now, out on 17A, that's where Jean grew up, and I spent a lot of time in that house when I was a child as well. Next slide, please. Okay, that's me when I was a little girl. That was me when I was,
You would have been my friend.
10 years old. All right, and here is me at Coastal Coffee some 4 years later. And so I was born here. I was born across from McDonald's, and about a half mile from there, so I've come a long way, right? All right, and I've been involved for the last 5 years in town with a nonprofit called Summerville Amphitheater, which has come with some resistance. I understand that because of the name, and I'll explain why it's Summerville Amphitheater. Now, I have some musician friends in here. I won't name them, but y'all know why we call it Summerville Amphitheater. You're a musician trying to earn money. And Summerville, it's a shame. I'll give you an example. I played at Ghost Monkey Brewery in Mount Pleasant. Was paid $300. $300. In Summerville, I would have been paid $100 if I was lucky. Now I'll say something about Homegrown Brew House. When I first came to Homegrown Brew House, he said he didn't want any music, couldn't afford any music. They needed a license. And I said I understood. I did come back, and then Scotty Oliver started playing here and opened for free and was doing original music. And so I came to Caleb and asked him, I said, could Homegrown Brew House, would they be interested in letting Bummerville Amphitheater start a songwriter series? And what we did is we took the fund from Bummerville Amphitheater, because I'm a small business owner myself, and I understand cash flow and how hard it is to want to invest in something. So I said, we'll walk beside you for 6 months, and I'll pay the guys $50 to come up here and play original music. And after 6 months, I said, I can't afford to do it anymore. So Caleb started paying it. And that's what we wanted to do. And to Caleb's credit, and Homegrown Brewhouse's credit, as they've seen the revenue increase from the music, they're paying the musicians more. I can't say that about every establishment in this town. When I started there, I was working for $50 to host an open mic, and I'm sure Brad Mallett would be I know Jackie would say that I was instrumental in building their music community to over at Coastal Coffee Roasters. I asked for a $25 raise. He said no. I said, well, it's time for me to move on. As it turns out, not only do they have a Coastal Coffee Roasters here, they got an Oak Grove Brewery here, and the warehouse in between. So we have 2 venues that are only paying musicians $50 a piece. It's not fair, folks. And so when people talk about community, and the coupling community with making a profit on the backs of musicians, or it's don't buy into that, folks. Where community is happening is at Summerville Resource Center. I was there Monday afternoon at a food bank, watching the people come in for food. So if you want to deal with community, if you want Chamber of Commerce community, you don't want to vote for me, because I'm not that guy. I'm not the Chamber of Commerce candidate. I'm just an authentic guy who sees a need here in town. You can go to the next slide, please. Now it's going to be a sore subject for some people, and it's but we need to see where we are before we move forward. We had a referendum. I was the vote yes category, and Diane, my friend, was a vote no. Now, and my friend Peter over here was a vote yes, and Ms. Gorman was a vote yes. And I did not vote for Mayor Johnson. I voted for Bill Collins. I didn't vote for Bill Collins the first time. I voted for Dickie Myler. But I voted for Mr. Collins because I wanted that hotel. And I didn't do any research into it. I just said, man, this would be good for town. We need something in town. And Mr. Johnson, Mayor Johnson won. And as soon as he won, the ordinances, I would say, were I'm going to call it calibrated, tweaked. And it was unfortunate timing. When somebody wins the election, I think it was ill-advised to council to change the ordinances, calibrate them however slightly it is. We could debate that forever. But it was, once it was pointed out to me that had been done, I said, that's not fair. This is not good. It's not good precedent set that we change the ordinances because we don't like who gets elected. And I'll explain my yes vote in a more logical way. Okay? The mayor has to run in every district within the city. the bar for being elected to mayor is higher than it is to be a council person. Okay? So I thought I wasn't looking at it so much from who was holding office at the time, but as the office of mayor in general, regardless of who was the mayor. Now, to be honest with you, had that referendum passed, I would not be running for mayor, because I do not have the administrative skills, the executive skills that would be needed for a strong mayor position. That's why I'm running, because the no votes won. And that's the way it is. So what we do is, complain, we adapt to what's going on. So I'm running for mayor because I think I could be effective in that form of government, even though I didn't vote for it. All right? And
was that a referendum on the mayor's position?
As far as it's a form of government, you have I don't like to call it strong mayor or weak mayor. It's like council form, mayor form would be the way to describe it. Now, what had happened, to be honest with you, I got in a little trouble during this thing and this time when I run this campaign, I'm not going to do like I did before because I'm the one at the top. But some big money was spent on advertisement like this from a digital place, and this is where y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but that's okay. See, symbols are very, very strong and important, and they resonate. Sometimes we don't really realize that our subconsciouses are picking up on things, and sometimes they call them dog whistles. I would call that almost a dog whistle. All right. And we go to the next slide. And if y'all would like to talk to me about why I think that's a dog whistle later on, I'll be happy to take it. We decided we wanted a council form of government, so what does that mean? The mayor has no more power than any other council member. Okay? So when the candidate tells you, I'm going to work with the other counties, I'm going to do this, I'm going to fix your roads, the truth is, they can't do that. So I'm going to ask y'all, I'm not going to criticize anybody, but that's the truth of the matter is, if a candidate tells you they're going to fix your roads, they're not being intellectually honest with you. I would tell you right now, I cannot fix your roads. What I would suggest you do is accept the fact that you're going to be in traffic for years. Because this is not going to happen overnight. The other thing, the mayor, as I said before, represents all citizens in every district. And that's where he can have a little bit more influence, I wouldn't call it power, if he can build a consensus among all citizens to be effective. But what do I mean by all citizens? I mean citizens that don't have the same skin color we have, don't worship the same God we worship, that don't identify themselves as we identify ourselves. There's a lot of people in this town that are gay. They deserve to be represented. There's people that are below the poverty line, that feel powerless, that they don't have a voice in government, that nobody really stands for them. I experienced that last night. We talked about that a little bit more. But this is the part that I think I would excel at. The large part of the mayor's role is ceremonial. You all know Shady knows how to put on a show. And I can tell you that. So that's, and what we want to do is we want to project the best face for other communities. And that face is going to be your mayor. Now you ask why you need to shave, you need a haircut. I'm not going to shave or cut my hair until after August 19th because I got picked for a role in Savannah as a quarry workman in a film called The Underground Railroad. So this look is making me money right now. All right, so y'all, so that's kind of where we are with the government. So when you're shopping for your mayor, your next mayor, because I know not all of y'all are going to vote for me, but I appreciate y'all coming and keeping an open mind. the large part of ceremonial. So I think if we market ourselves, and I think this is where we're headed. We're at an identity crisis. Next slide.
Always.
Okay, you cut it off now. It's fine. All right, we're done with the slideshow. So here's where we are. What is our identity? Well, in 1978, I could have told you that. We were a bedroom community with good schools and the best high school football team in the state. In fact, Summerville was known for football, and the arts suffered in the shadow, the long shadow of John McKissick. It's just the way it was. It was good. It was good for business. It was good for the JCs. It brought people, when people decided they were going to move to Charleston, they said, well, Dorchester 2's got the best schools. All right. Now, we are not a powerhouse in football. I think where we're headed, and you might can help us with this, Ryan, I think the Chambers Agenda wants us to become an art, music, and food destination. I think I heard Kevin say that. And that's a good idea. If we shoot high, okay? I'm not talking about mediocrity here. In fact, that's what we don't want, okay? We're not the only town in South Carolina with starting a public arts center or a music scene or anything like that. We're not. So what we need to do is attract, I'm not going to say better talent, let's just call it bigger talent, more well-renowned talent. That's what I do in this listening room. If y'all were to come on one of the shows we have here, is we have somebody like Robert Lighthouse, who's internationally known. He comes in, he plays. I have people from Greenwood, I have Tallahassee, Florida, and Florence, South Carolina. Came to see Robert, traveled that far to see him, and they spent the night in hotels in Summerville. You think they would come from Tallahassee to see Fleming Moore play guitar? No. They would. And that's all right. But what it does is it opens up an opportunity for our local musicians to play. And I think I'm rubbing them the wrong way because I'm trying to tell them, I'm saying, everybody wants to play music. It's getting ridiculous. I mean, I was met with resistance behind Garen's Pharmacy, maybe because of the name Bummerville Amphitheater, or they just didn't want it. But now it's caught on, everybody's on the bandwagon. What I'm saying, we need to be strategic about these things. When we put music out, we don't need it in front of every storefront on Third Thursday. If you notice, I didn't do it last Third Thursday because it's becoming too much. I mean, you can't really distinguish one person playing from the next. And I would encourage, if possible, the Public Arts Center to try to recruit somebody well-renowned so that people would drive to see their work. And that's a hard challenge. I know it's hard to curate a music scene, but unfortunately, I don't know what I'm going to do in the future with that. It's up in the air right now. To be frank, I'm a little concerned that Public Works has been involving themselves in music, and I was hoping they would stick with visual arts, but we'll see. I don't know if that's in their budget or not. Leave the music curation to the musicians.
Yeah.
They've been working hard. All right. So.
Hey, Fleming.
Yes.
I'm going to suggest you come sit down. This is not very conducive to a podcast. You're supposed to be in front of the microphone. You're a musician. You know all this stuff.
Well, I was handing it up there.
You went off script. You're standing up in front of the crowd over here with no microphone. What's going on? I had to reposition my camera.
I'm sorry.
You messed everything.
Well, like I said, this is unscripted, and I think what people are looking for is authenticity in their candidates. And for sure, I want to be authentic, and I am. I'm not going to change my appearance. I will take my hat off if I'm in church or council chambers, but that's about it. So do we have any questions? Yes.
Okay, so you may be aware that the town of Summerville is involved in a conflict with the black community concerning the tennis courts at Doty Park. The town is not granting access to the black community to use the courts and a black instructor to instruct children. I wonder whether if you were elected mayor, you would intervene in that situation and open that up.
Well, I'm all for reconciliation. In fact, I want to reconcile the differences between. So the way I would do that, I don't know the man's name involved, but it sounds to me like it's a tennis instructor up against the town of Summerville, and it'd be the person in charge of Parks and Recreation. Is that correct?
That's part of it.
All right, so what we need to do is the first thing you do is you got to sit down and talk.
It's already been mediated.
It's been mediated. Did they listen to one another?
The town of Summerville was told before a lawsuit was filed against them, they needed to reconcile with Mr. James Martin. And they
Well, then I think Mr. Martin has no other, unfortunately, I don't really know the particulars about that, but it sounds to me like the town is in for another lawsuit. Personally, I don't know the particulars about that. I think I might have read something where somebody used the wrong language, foul language. So,
But it kind of goes back to what you were talking about being both sides of the track, right?
right.
I mean, as mayor, you would want to bring both of those sides together. I think that would probably be the fair question, right?
Right.
Would you allow that to happen?
Absolutely.
On your watch?
In fact, I think I would try one more time to mediate, to be honest with you. I think reconciliation, I was told the other day that not everything can be reconciled. And that may be true. But I'm going to...
That's very unfortunate because Doty Park used to be a hub for the community surrounding, which is predominantly a black community. And now they took what used to be some ball fields and a park and turned it into tennis courts. And now that the children in the community do want to play, you can go there right now and all of them have reserved signs on them where nobody can play except the instructor. It's being ran like a country club.
Well, I'm going to look further into that, and maybe that would be a good thing for me to get behind as far as raising awareness to that issue, because I don't think it's fair that those children would have to come all the way to Laurel Street to play tennis. That just doesn't make sense. That's yes, sir.
Can I add, the status of it right now is the town administrator brought a referendum before the town council to condemn James Martin, the black tennis instructor, for a confrontation that occurred between him and the town tennis pro. That confrontation happened when the town pro turned the lights off on James Martin at night while he's in the middle of a tennis instruction with his kids. And so naturally he got a little upset about it, had some words with the town administrator. So that's the basis that the town used an excuse to pass this referendum condemning James Martin, saying he's permanently banned from Doty Park forever.
Nonetheless, if you go over there and want to play tennis, all of the courts have a reserve sign and nobody's playing. So black kids can't play.
Nobody
That's
can.
not fair. Nobody's playing.
I hear you, and I will look into I'll research this a little bit more. I hate to, on one hand, I understand, what's the gentleman's name, Mr.
James Martin.
James Martin.
Mr. Martin was probably passionate and lost his temper and said some things he regrets. I've done the same thing.
I know Mr. Martin personally. He's a man of faith. He doesn't use foul language.
Okay.
He doesn't.
All right, well, are there any other questions? Y'all have any concerns about development?
Yeah. How can we slow it down till we catch the roads up with it?
We're not going to do that, but we can slow down. We're not going to do the roads, but I have some ideas about development that I would think. One of them is, it's kind of like a no-brainer, I hope. Development should pay for itself. I would, in other words, we shouldn't be taking hospitality and accommodation taxes to buy fire trucks for Nexton.
That's right.
Okay? Even though that's perfectly legal within the statute of the hospitality and accommodation taxes, you can do that. But I would
Well,
rather.
then who pays for that? For the fire trucks and everything else?
Well, you are every time you drink a beer.
Okay.
Yeah, every time you drink a beer or have.
Well, I mean, who would you propose does, you said hospitality tax and
Well,
everything
I
else
was saying
pays for
to
that.
developers, one thing corporations like is having their logo. I can't give them to give you any money unless you put their logo on something. I don't mind having West Rock put a logo on a fire truck if they're going to spend $1.2 million on fire trucks. Right.
Have one of these developers put their name on a park.
Right.
So we don't have to pay for them.
That kind of just some outside thinking. Yes, Tommy.
So a question, so all that's wonderful and everything, but who's going to oversight this corporation to make sure that they're not taking advantage of us? That's it.
Well, that would be up to the council and the mayor and the county government.
Right. But how do we know that they're not going to interfere with their money by our elections?
Well, what you do is you elect a guy like Fleming Moore that's taking zero money from anybody. I've had Miss Frankenberger offering me money. I've had Mr. Gorman offer me money, and I refused.
I've offered you no money. Let's just
Yeah.
state that.
And I told Peter I appreciated him being willing to do a fundraiser for me. And by no means I am not going to shy away. If Peter Gorman decides to support me for mayor, I will welcome his support. If Diane Frankenberger decides she wants to support me instead of Mr. Hearn, I will take her support as well. But it's not financial support. What I need is people on the street knocking on doors when the time comes. I think we have a good shot at winning this election. And I'm not going to criticize or disparage the other candidates. Mr. Hearn, first of all, Ricky Waring, I've known since I could remember. And Ricky has always had a heart for being a first responder. My brother was stung by yellow jackets in that same ditch behind Laurel Street that I keep talking about. And Ricky came to his rescue and saved my brother. So he's a good fireman. We'll say that about Ricky. Now, Mr. Hearn, I met for the first time at a fundraiser in town. And then I saw him again the very next day on King Street when I was playing a gig at Gorin's hat shop. And I started thinking, man, this guy is starting to stalk me, but no, he wasn't. As it turns out, he has a daughter that goes to the College of Charleston, much the same age as my daughter. So I don't want to, I won't disparage anybody like that because they have wives, and that's one of the things I felt so bad about. Whether you agree with Mr. Johnson or not, some of the things, the spouses take those things to heart, and we can't, when we criticize people, we're criticizing their whole families, and that's I want to protect my daughter, and I'm sure Mr. Hearn wants to protect his daughter. But what I will say is if I point out, getting back to your question about conflicts of interest, don't think I'm criticizing, I'm just pointing out conflicts of interest. And what I wanted to talk about why I want to be mayor, and it's not so much want, it's why I'm willing to serve to be mayor, is I think we have enough attorneys, not that I like attorneys when I need one, believe me, but when you fill your whole roster with attorneys, and I'm talking about the council, then you get a limited view of the world. All right? We have two capable attorneys. You might not agree with them, but they're good. Walter Bailey and Bill McIntosh are all the lawyers we need on council. And we especially, I don't think, need a candidate who's a real estate attorney. If you're looking to slow down development, I mean, that honest, I'm not saying there's any impropriety going on, but if we're going to establish trust in our government, we need there not to be any kind of conflict of interest, whether, perceived or not. And,
Can you give us more background of your experience? What you got going on?
well,
You're not a lawyer, banker, or anything?
Well, let me get back to this conflict of interest, because it's important. When I served on vestry of St. Paul's, I was hired on as staff, and it became abundantly clear to me that, hey, I'm voting on issues that affect me as an employee. So I had to decide whether I wanted to stay on vestry. This was my own decision, whether I stay on vestry or I stay on staff. Well, you get paid $0 to be on vestry. You get paid a little bit to be a sexton at the church. And I had a daughter in college, so I went for the job and resigned as vestry.
So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah. So that was the deal on that. So, and that's just where I'm coming from. If I were a real estate attorney taking contributions from developers in Miami, that's not criticizing him, I'm just pointing out a fact. And if I'm going to run, I'm going to have to point out these facts about what my opponents are doing. I mean, I'm not taking money from developers in Miami. Mr. Hearn is. Now, he can speak to that to y'all, and you ask him about that. So to answer your question, the way you do it is you get people on council that don't have ties with developments, that are doing it out of service, not for money. Believe me, at $15,000 a year, you've got to ask yourself, why are these candidates raising tens of thousands of dollars, taking contributions from developers in Miami for a $15,000 a year job? That's a legitimate question. Now, me, on the other hand, if I end up being mayor, I'm only going to be able to work 15 hours a week at $15,000 a year because I'm going to have to make ends meet. So I can't do all that much damage, especially, with the way it's set up. But actually, I think I could do a lot of good because if you notice this room, I have young people, I have older people. I'm disappointed none of my friends of color are here today, but that'll change. And so I will hope to get a broad spectrum from every vein of life, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I want your vote. Don't hold it against me that I'm a Democrat, please. Okay, but I am. And but that's just the way it is. And what I offer, back to your question, is a life experience that no one else has. You're going to find out a lot of things about me, things that I'm not proud of, especially if this thing gets close at the end. I'm sure there's going to be an October surprise. I've already seen, used to be a time, I'm just going to be honest with y'all right now. From the time I was 17 till I was 47, I lived a troubled life. I was involved in alcoholism for years and years and years. The last 10 years, I turned my life around. And it was a long time. Used to be when you Googled Fleming Moore, the first thing that would pop up would be public records search. We got it. And that went away until recently when I Googled my name. That's popped up near the top of the Google. So that means that people with tens of thousands of dollars can hire op research on me, and they don't really need to do that. All you got to do is go in the Summerville Journal scene in the police blotter, and you'll find out all the ridiculous things I've done.
I was just trying to find out where you play.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was surprised to see that the other day, but I don't think that's by accident that's shown up.
Well, it's not where you've been, it's where you're going, Fleming.
That's right.
Right. Well, so that's my point. So we know where we've been. We know where we are. The no's won the referendum. where do we want to go and how we're going to get there are the two questions we need to answer. Where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? Well, where I'd like to see us go is to be a destination, not a second thought of Charleston, but an actual destination for art. And that's why I hope everybody will do their most to support Public Works, help them as much as you can, so that they can attract the type of artists we need to be in that space so that they can attract people from 50 miles away or further. So I would, I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for music and food. And the way we do that is we curate an art scene and we curate a music scene. And the way you curate a music scene, I don't know anything about artists, but I imagine it's the same way, is you establish a venue that musicians want to play in. Good musicians. Robert Lighthouse, every time he comes through the South, wants to play here. Why? Because he has a captive listening audience and he gets paid more than he would if he played anywhere else in town. So that's how you curate a music scene. Food, I think restaurants and chefs, it looks like Nexton's going to get most of that action coming up. But one of the pipe dreams I really have of where I'd like to see us go in 8 years is to establish a performing arts center somewhere in town, maybe on the Dominion Energy place. Maybe they'd like to support that, seeing how my electric bill's going right back up to where it used to be. I was supposed to get $1,000 I never got, so maybe we can get them to help us with that. But I would like to call it the Gus Moody Performing Arts Center. And if any of y'all lived in Summerville long enough or you know who Gus Moody was, he was an exemplary citizen who lived a good moral life, and he mentored generations and generations of children from every socioeconomic class. It didn't matter if you lived at the country club or you lived in Germantown. He treated you the same. So he didn't look at anybody. So that's one thing I don't want to do, is cause a socioeconomic us against them kind of thing, because I've seen some of the most poor people be very, very generous. And I've seen some of the wealthiest people be very, very generous. So it has nothing to do with how much money you make or you don't make. It's whether or not money or love rules your heart. And that's an individual question that I struggle with on a daily basis. Sometimes I make decisions based on fear of economic insecurity. And other times I make decisions based out of love, where my heart is generous. So that's something we can all work on. I don't know if I answered any questions.
I think you answered a lot of questions.
All right.
But do we have any more questions? Because that's what we're here for, a Q&A session. What do you guys got? Anything?
The town collects accommodation taxes and hospitality taxes to the tune of some $4 million, I believe. Can you talk a little bit more about where that money goes and how you'd like to redistribute it?
Yes. In fact, I had some numbers, and they kind of morphed on me. One thing I will say, and I don't know if this is coincidence or not, or it might have been in the works, but since I started toying with being mayor, I was talking about hospitality and accommodation taxes and how we needed to fund our nonprofits. And I was glad to see that every nonprofit that put in for some money this year got every penny that they asked for, which is, you got to give council credit for that, or for doing that. Right now we're buying sidewalks. We put in, I think, $250,000 worth of sidewalks, which is a good thing. We spent $200,000 on these masked arms out here which I'm dubious about that. And as I stated before, I'm dubious about the $1.2 million for fire trucks. One of the thoughts I had would be, in order to attract artists here, and I want to say this carefully because I don't want to criticize, and I think it's a good first step, the murals that we're painting. But if you compare the murals, the most recent ones, to the ones in Lake City, where they actually taken money and invested in mural artists that are renowned throughout the country, that will attract people here. I'm afraid people aren't going to drive from Columbia, South Carolina to Summerville to see what's painted on coastal coffee roasters right now. I mean, and so what we're going to do, what I'm afraid we're going to do is we're just going to paint murals everywhere without being strategic about it. I'm not happy with the mural back here behind the, I suggest y'all go walk back there, and it's called legal graffiti. That's not what we want, folks. We want to be strategic about these murals, and we want them to be more than just an advertisement for a brand. You know, we want them to be something that will attract people. I would invite y'all to look online at Lake City, the murals there, the honeybee mural that are painted in Lake City, and just see if that's something that y'all would like to see. So I would like to take that money, instead of funneling it through a nonprofit, actually commission artists and put the money in the hands of the artists. And I'm going to say this about hospitality and accommodation taxes. I was calling for those murals back in February, and now they're painting murals. Might be a coincidence. I called for more spending on the hospitality and accommodation tax. Now, there's an event happening in October that I'm dubious about. Now, I think $13,500 is going to a first-time event, and I was asked to be involved with it on the tail end, and I almost bit. But when I found out how the money had come about, and that they're going to be serving, not that I'm against alcohol, I'm in a brew house, but they're going to start serving alcohol for this event at Give Ann State Park. The first time that's ever been done in the state of South Carolina, where they're going to have beer vendors selling on the state park. There's plenty of private places you can sell beer on. I don't think we should be setting the precedent of commercializing our state parks. And what's even worse about this is if you follow the money, the people putting on the events are going to give crumbs to the musicians, and they've created an event so that their businesses can prosper. Follow the money. Okay, on that one, that's an unwise. You know how many events Bummerville Amphitheater could put on with $13,500? That would finance the whole year, and you would have quality music on the square every third Thursday. And it would attract people. Outside events are fraught with risk. They might pull it off, they might not, but Bummerville Amphitheater is not going to be involved in that. They brought me in on the tail end of it. To be honest with you, I was kind of, at first, my feelings were hurt because I've been working hard on the music scene, and the first time any hospitality and accommodation taxes were put out there, they left me out of that conversation until the end, probably because they know I'm going to advocate that the musicians got paid, not the vendors, not the beer people, you know. So that's kind of where I am with hospitality and accommodation taxes. What time is it?
Right. Or it should be equal, right? I mean, it should be spread out among all the people there. But yeah, we're at 49 minutes. Did that answer your question at all? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got about 10 minutes left for questions.
Is the idea of the hotel in town dead forever and ever?
I think so. I think the problem with the hotel was, and I think we escaped. I think that place was too big. Now that I look at it for that particular spot, I would say that yes, that location is dead, and that they thank y'all for coming. They would probably have done better if they brought the public in on the front end of that deal. That was decided. I'm afraid the same thing is going on right now. I went to a vision workshop yesterday at the Rollins Center, and it reminded me when I used to teach school and we had these compacts with the children. It was a dog and pony show. We'd go in there and we'd meet with the parents and we'd say we could do X, we provided X, Y, and Z simply because there was a statute that we had to have these meetings with the parents. Nothing really got done. That's probably why I'm not the school teacher for very long. But this vision plan that we work on, I went in there yesterday. They already decided what they wanted to do. What they want to do. I think they're following some plan that the Chamber of Commerce with their UDO. They're trying to justify their unified development ordinances through this vision plan, and they told us to dream as big as we wanted to, and they wrote down. We were able to participate, but I could tell a person from the chamber sat down with me and accidentally tipped their hand what their plans are on the other side of the track. And he mentioned Brownsville, and I said, y'all, what are y'all going to do to help the people in Brownsville? He goes, oh, forget I said Brownsville. Let's talk about over there on the other side of Main Street. So what they're going to do is, I think, put multi-use buildings up on that side of the track, on that side of Main Street. And their plan is probably, I don't know that we can stop gentrification or even if that's a good idea, but what we need to do is help the people and the citizens of Brownsville with title searches now so they know what they have, so the developers don't grab up their land on pennies on the dollar. And that's, so you can see I have an uphill battle ahead of me, and I'm not going to make any friends on this journey, I'm sure. And but I'm not going to ask y'all for money. I just ask y'all when the time comes, I'm going to need help in every district. They can imitate my ideas, but they can't steal my hustle from me, you know, and that's the truth. You will see me work hard for your vote. I want to thank each and every one of y'all for being here, and I thank y'all.
All right, well, I think you said it all. We got time for one more question. You want to do one more?
One more question.
One more. Does anybody have another question? And then we'll wrap this thing up.
I'll just make a comment.
Go ahead, Eddie.
I'm not originally from Summerville. I moved down to Low Country in the 70s, and I moved to Summerville in 95. And I love this town. What I hate to see is Summerville turn into a mountain class. That's where we're headed. I know growth has to happen. That needs to be intelligent. And also my concern, I live in Gadsden area. That Gadsden property that's still vacant, I'm not sure, it's still associated with the Manor House. I think there was a movement to turn that into a park. And I really hope that goes through. And I am concerned about Brownsville. That's close enough to Brownsville that maybe some sort of facilities could be installed there, if not in Brownsville. Help with that situation as well. That's a lot of acreage. I think it's like 65 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to see a massive development going there because then you got environmental issues and traffic. But some of it will change it, but it needs to be smart growth. I don't see a lot of that.
Yeah, and people are talking about development and growth, but some of the issues that I'm concerned about that probably aren't on anybody's radar is racial reconciliation. And I wanted to, and also even within I used to go to St. Paul's Church, and I don't go there anymore. There was a schism in the church, and part of the church went over here to the Good Shepherd, and the other half stayed at St. Paul's. And one side is they're refusing to reconcile. Okay, and here's what's going on. My friends at the Good Shepherd can't afford the upkeep of the church. Neither can the people at St. Paul's. If you go there right now and look at St. Paul's, at the dental work up on the steeple, half of it's gone. That fell down during Hurricane Matthew when I was the sexton, and it's still sitting there. So as they continue to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawsuits they can't afford, one of our best historic spots in town is falling apart. So when we don't reconcile things, things continue to fester. Now with racial reconciliation, Mr. Lewis Smith, who is a passionate man that can get himself in trouble, I know that, but he had somebody flag his business. And what I mean by flag, they put a Confederate flag on his door. I stopped by to see him the other day. He said, you're the first person within the town that's come by to see me about this. And I said, well, I'm sorry I hadn't been there any sooner. Now, so it was, right, so it's, you would think that the flag issue is over. And let me just say this about the flag. I was brought up at St. Paul's, where there are scores of Confederate soldiers buried there. My great-grandfather was captured in the Civil War and walked home from a POW camp from New York barefooted. So I was taught as a young person to have pride in the battle flag of the South and to have pride in the Confederacy. And so I had pride in those things. Because you're 6 to 7, we're taught these things. And so when you're asking people who've lived in Summerville their whole lives, that grew up with that they can't fly. I'm not saying you can't fly the flag. I'm saying don't put it on people's businesses. Fly it on your truck if you want to. Do whatever you want to, but don't put it in people's faces, because I understand now that flag to a lot of people is terrifying. My mother told me that it used to scare her. The Ku Klux Klan used to march through Summerville back in the 30s.
Symbols are not frozen in time.
Right, and if you go back to that to the vote no thing, that X on that box was everything but the Confederate battle flag without the stars. That's what it was. And so some slick digital guy that elects senators all over the country got involved in our local election and stirred up the good old boys. And so the deal is this. We got 3 choices for mayor, people. We got the insider. That's Ricky Warren. Born here, been involved with the inside, the good old boys. Then you got the inside candidate who came from outside of Summerville, was in with the insiders. That would be Mr. Hearn. And then you got me, the inside outsider. I was born here, but I've never been part of the community. So vote for the inside outsider.
I think a good place to end it, maybe, Sarah.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I know y'all know me as Fleming Moore's daughter, but I want to say I'd be here even if he wasn't my dad, because his character is like unmatched by anybody I know. Like, at 8, I never thought my dad would be a dad. And at 17, I never thought anybody would come to listen to my dad play music. And at 20, I never thought my dad would be saying I'm running for mayor in the year 2019. And I'm 21, and he's taught me that nothing's impossible and that all my goals are reachable.
Hello.
He supported me every single step of the way, even when he felt like he couldn't support himself. And so, like, whether or not I was Sarah Moore or
Yeah, I'm in the
somebody
middle
else,
of my first town hall.
I would say Shady for mayor. So just keep that.
No, that's okay. This is my brother calling from Folly Beach. He's going to run for mayor of Folly Beach now. No.
Well, that'd be a bit different, Mayor. He's our mayor's face.
I'll get with you about
All right, well, while Fleming's on the phone, I want to thank everybody for coming out. Appreciate you supporting Homegrown Brewhouse, Studio 117. By the way, Fleming's going to be playing out front for the rest of the evening, or 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. I'll be playing out front. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Caroline.
Yes.
Thank you, CJ.